2013 Toyota Sienna fuel pump replacement. Check the pinned comment for the timestamps. Diagnostics is next. The repair starts at about the 3:30 mark. The fuel pump in this Sienna is unfortunately not accessible through the cabin. You have to lower the fuel tank to get to the fuel pump. The fuel pump also is not just the fuel pump, the actual assembly, because this is a returnless fuel system. The fuel pressure regulator is in there, the fuel filter's in there, the fuel pump, and then obviously the float for the sender for the fuel gauge. I'm going to show you how to get to all those parts, and at the end of the video you can also see how to break down the whole fuel pump module in case you're just replacing one part, for example like the fuel pressure regulator, or if you're replacing the whole thing, you can see that in this video too. The problem with this particular Sienna is not the fuel pump, it's the fuel pressure regulator, but because that fuel pressure regulator is inside the fuel pump module, which is in the tank, we got to drop the tank and do the whole rigmarole just to get to that fuel pressure regulator. You'll see all that in this video. The fuel pressure regulator on these returnless systems, it can fail one way or the other. It can fail too high, meaning in a position where it's allowing too high a pressure, it's not leaking down, or it can fail the opposite way. It's leaking down and not allowing any pressure to build up in the supply line. Check the pinned comment. I'll put a link in there to a video where I show how to tap into Toyota fuel lines. Best way to catch that stuff is to jump onto a fuel line with the pressure gauge and see whether you're actually getting fuel pressure. If it's too low, if it's too high. If you're getting good fuel pressure, then you should probably reconsider your fuel pump as the culprit for your hard starts or whatever. In this particular case though, we were getting max fuel pressure, unregulated fuel pressure. In the line it was up at close to 60 psi, which is the max output on the OEM pumps. The actual range that you're looking for is, it's supposed to be regulated between 44 and about 50, max 50 psi. Because we were able to see that through the fuel pressure check, we know that the pressure regulator is out, so we're going to go in and replace all that. Because we have to drop the fuel tank, it's a good idea to have some type of jack. Check the pinned comment for a link to another video I posted about how to make a little platform and attach it to your jack if you have something like this. The fuel tank itself is not that heavy. It can easily be handled by 2 people. It's plastic, but that's only if it's empty. And it's very important that you get the fuel tank empty, because one of the lines we'll be disconnecting is for the fuel filler, and that goes near to the bottom of the tank. So if there's fuel in there, when you disconnect that fuel filler line, fuel is going to go everywhere anyway. In our case, this is a planned repair. Since we were running high, we were actually able to run the fuel tank down real low. But if you have a full tank and you're doing this, you can try siphoning it out, but it goes real low where where the fuel filler goes into the tank. You'll see in a second in the video. I'm not sure if you could, what kind of siph you would get down there. I don't have a siph that's long enough to reach down there, but you might figure out a way to do that. Other option is to disconnect the filler on the bottom, which you'll see in the video, and let the fuel drain. Luckily this is a planned repair for us, so we were able to run the fuel tank down real low. You can see there the light is on. As you can see, I've got the front up on ramps right now. There's a few different ways you can do this. I'm going to put the rear on ramps as well. Here in the owner's manual, you can see on page 669 that we've got some info for that rear jack point, which you can see we've got a nub there. That's what we're going to be looking for. So I'm going to jack it up in the rear and then slide the ramps under the tires. So coming over here, there's the bumper. You don't want to hit this plastic stuff. That there, get this to focus, that there is our lift point, with that little drainage circle there. So I'll put the jack there. Here's the light on the back of the left side. It's the trim piece bumper. I'm going to go past this plastic, past it. There's, you see where the jack is there. If I can get this to focus. There we go. See that nub there? That's your lift point for the rear. To depressurize the fuel system, we'll remove a relay in this box. This is on the driver's side of the engine bay. There's a little tab in the front. Just push in this tab here. There's a couple little loops on the back. Those loops there. So you can see here, this first one is EFI relay, AF heater, C/OPN, that's circuit openings relay, and then fuel pump. So it's going to be this one here. We'll pull it straight up. On the Sienna and a lot of the Toyotas, the returnless systems, the fuel pump relay will still get power. The fuel pump will still get power even if this relay is not in there. So you have to pull this circuit open relay. I'm going to use some pliers to pull this out. If you use pliers, just be careful that you don't crush anything. It's just going to pull straight up. And you kind of hold the board down, or you drop it like that, but that's the one we want to pull out. Don't drop it like me. That's the relay there, and those are the spades that are holding it in, so it just pulls right out. Back inside here, we'll start it up, and it'll die real quickly. Here we go. And that's it. We'll restart again. And she's not starting, so we're depressurized. To depressurize the vapor side, we'll just open up the fuel cap here. Just leave that open, and we can put that back. Back in here, we'll replace this so we don't forget it later. And you can see it only goes in one way. See how those spades are oriented towards that? And you're just going to push it right in. So see, line it up, push it in. That's it. Just make sure it's in there. Give it a good wiggle. And we can put the lid of the fuse box back on. You got to line these up first. That goes back behind there. If you do the front first, it won't really catch right. So do the back first, and then up towards the front, you're just going to push it down, and that snap. Oops, see, I didn't do it right. Let me try it again. Let me get on the back little ones there. There it goes. Now it's on. As an extra safety precaution, I'm just going to disconnect the negative terminal on the battery here. That's a 10mm. So there you can see the fuel tank there. There's some lines we need to get disconnected that are covered by this. So there are 6 10mm fasteners around the perimeter of that. That's the cover for the charcoal canister. So I'm going to remove all those and take that cover out. There's the cover. You can see it's quite large, but it's just plastic, so it doesn't weigh anything. And the 6 fasteners are there. They're all the same. You can see there's one there, 2 up on the top, 1 there, and 1 over there. I'm going to do my best with the camera, but no guarantees. So you can see once we pull that down, we have this fuel line here. This is the fuel line coming out of the tank. There's no return. There's no return line on this particular system. And then we have a couple of vapor lines here. So to get this orange connector thing off here, it's like a cover over the connector. You're supposed to push it down like this and then kind of work it back. They can be a little bit tricky though. I'm having trouble with this thing. I'm just going to move this right here. So I've got a little bit more flexibility to get my arm in here. It's got to move back towards this line because it's actually on that line. Okay. I get my pry. Okay, there's that side. And just had this side, okay. Alright, now it's back. Okay. Now this is the actual fuel line connector, so we'll get this cleaned up a little bit. Spray some water on this paper towel. Get it cleaned up just so no dirt goes in there. Well, I just realized I'm not sure if the camera was actually able to catch this any information for getting this little thing off, because it moved before I started filming, but this goes down like that. So you gotta pry these open and then pull it down, and then it slides back on that line. So how these work is you squeeze in this blue, there's another blue panel over here. Squeeze them in, you're just supposed to use your fingers and then pull the lines apart. You'll be able to move it past a flange at first, and then there's a couple O-rings that'll kind of slow it down. I'm just gonna show you here what we're doing when we go to open up this fuel line. These little panels here, you press those and they're going to move. See the blue part there? They're going to move it back like that. And then there's a flange that's catching on, and then a couple of O-rings. So basically it's going to go like this. You squeeze it in. You just only want to use your fingers and then pull this back like that. First thing it'll clear is that flange, and then there's those 2 O-rings. You can see them in there. You can see the yellow one right there. Those are what will kind of slow it down. Then when we go to push it back together, you want to push it until it snaps and then give it a good tug. because sometimes it can make a noise where it feels like it's in there, but it's not all the way. So just to show that one more time, you're pushing in these panels with your fingers, and then I'll pull it back a little more slowly this time. See, it clears that flange, and then you can release it at that point and then pull it out. So that's what we're doing with those fuel lines. There'll be two of these connections that we'll have to disconnect. So let's see if I can go like this. The hardest part is getting it to clear that flange in the beginning. Okay, so it just cleared the flange, all right, and it's moving back now. This is the flange I was talking about, that little part there. That's the only reason you need to squeeze it. Now you can just pull it, but just be ready because there's going to be some fuel. So I have the container here, and you can see there's a little bit of fuel. Not too much because we did depressurize it. But still, you want to catch that fuel. A fair amount of fuel drained from there, so be advised about that. So let that drain for a couple minutes so it wouldn't make so much of a mess. And now I'm just going to put a couple of bags over these connectors to protect them from dirt and stuff that might get in there. So let's use these bags from the dollar store that fit great. There those are with some bags on them. To disconnect this vapor line, you need a screwdriver that'll fit in that little spot and put some vinyl tape on it. And you want to get in there. I might have to move the camera. You want to get in there and turn it to pry that little red thing down like you see I'm doing. Yeah, you don't want to bend it like I just did. Yeah, I need to change the way my screwdriver is. So I don't know if you could see that, but once you have it started, it's better to go in with a plastic, solid plastic, to kind of get behind it. It's coming now. Give it a little encouragement at the top. There it is. Okay. Alright. Gotta be real careful with these things, so I'm gonna go in with some picks now. Picks on the top on each side. And kind of see if I can get it out a little bit easier there. Let's see. Can you see how I got it out a little bit? I got the pick in there. Going on the other side. And I can turn this a little too. Going on the other side. So I'd rather not break this thing. Okay, let's see if that's enough. Nope. There, that's probably enough. Let's see, maybe if I pull both these picks back a little. There we go. Oh, well, you don't have to take it all the way off, but I just did. And anyway, it will come off if you take it all the way off. Now, let me slide it. Okay, and while we're up here at the front of the fuel tank, we're going to disconnect this little thing right here that holds this wiring harness into a little plastic spot. This is the wiring harness that's the fuel pump. That one there, those are typically easier if you've got some pliers that you can reach in there and squeeze the top and bottom like this, and then just kind of wiggle it out. Yeah, that one's not so bad. Okie dokie. This one as well we need to do. This one will probably break when you take it out. Try not to break it. Try to get under there with a pry and pop it out because it fits in one of those holes. But these ones are real easy to break. I got the pick on the side here, and I just was able to reach in, it feels like, and get one of those sides, one of those sides to come out. So there it is. Okay, it's got this. Got that deal there, and see, you gotta get them to come back out of the hole. So that's loose. Now we're back here by the rear tire, and we have to remove this plastic cover here. You can see the fuel filler net going in there, if I can get that to focus. And the FSM says, boy, everything's so close it's hard to get the camera to focus. Okay, there we go. The FSM says to remove these two fasteners. Those look like 12 millimeters. And I'm assuming that's for access to this right there. I'm just going to try to get in there with a wobble. But there are 3 fasteners for this plastic cover. There's that one there. Then coming down here, there's one right there. Just got to push that out of the way. It's right there. Then coming on the side, if I can get the light in there, there's the other one there. So I'm going to remove all those. Those look like those are all 10 millimeter. I was able to get in there no problem with a 1/4 inch drive, small 10 millimeter 1/4 inch drive socket and a 1/4 inch wobble. So this just comes off, and you can see there's our fuel filler neck there. We got some stuff to disconnect. These are those fasteners for that, and they're all the same. I did just remove this fastener here, put it back in place. To get a little bit of access to that one bolt, but I don't know if all Siennas have this. This might be like a fancy thing. We'll start with this here. You probably can't see it from the camera, but I just, with a knife, I just scribed the mark here and here. Because when we tighten it back up, if we align those marks, then it'll be about the same tightness as it was before. It doesn't feel like it's very tight. So I did clean it up a little bit as well. So I'll just loosen this up. You can see how it's moving off there. Let's get it loose enough to be able to pull that back. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, so this has some flexibility back here. I got a big 5-gallon container here sitting on top of a box because I think when I disconnect that there might be some fuel that leaks out even though the fuel is low, just judging by where it goes into the tank, so I'm going to be ready. That's the best I'm going to be able to do, otherwise the camera is in my way. So yeah, definitely some fuel leaking. I'm just pushing it that way with the flexibility that's available in that hose. There it goes. You can probably hear some fuel leaking there. Alright, I just moved the box and I was just pushing it back. Right, so there's the where it was connected, and I'll just tip this down, get whatever's in there out. Alright, I got the camera back over here. Just put some bags over both of those ends, and now we can do this vapor line. And these can be a little tricky. You're going to be pushing in on these ends. I'll have to show you more when I get it out, and then pulling them apart. So you only want to use your hands. Alright, hopefully that's a little better view. At the end of the game, you got to squeeze these tabs in on the top and the bottom. Right here are the flat parts, and then that's going to deform it quite a bit, and then you got to pull it back to get these little hooks past that little flange on the pipe. You'll see what I mean when I get it off. But these are a real pain, and it hurts your fingers to do it. But you have to be careful because it will break really easily. Alright, there it's going, almost. Oh, so close. But almost. My fingers really hurt. Come on, work with me. Oof. I gotta take a break. My fingers hurt too much. Come on. There it is. Okay, finally. Good grief, I can't even feel my fingers. Finally disconnected. I still can't feel my fingers. This is the flange I was talking about on this metal pipe here. And when you're squeezing in on this side, this flat side here, when you're squeezing this in, what you're trying to do is see that, I'll put an arrow on it, but that little kind of hook deal right there on the inside of this thing, there you can see a little bit better. That is what's catching on this. So the act of squeezing this, you have to deform it enough that that'll just clear it, and then while pulling it back, it really hurts your fingers. But it's not advisable to use anything other than your fingers, because it would be, as you can see, if you snap this right here, you'd have to replace this whole line. I'll put bags on these after I get this disconnected so it doesn't block the camera. This is another the fuel quick connect. It's just like that blue one we did earlier, but it has gray panels just because it's a slightly different size. Still going to be squeezing in and pulling back. And it's the same deal. It's got that little flange, and you're just squeezing in to clear that, and then there's a couple O-rings. I'm going to clean this up a little bit first before I open it up. There it is there. I got it cleaned up. And this is just the same like the other one. You're going to squeeze in these side panels. They're gray on this one. And then clear the flange, and then there's just the O-rings. I don't think any fuel is going to come out of here. Oh shoot, I can't even feel my fingers. Okay, maybe these fingers are better. Alright, I'm going to try to squeeze these in to get that past that flange, and it's not. Let's try this. And it's still not. I cannot feel my fingers. Oh, this is, okay, maybe then. No. Oh, how disappointing. Alright, I just got it to slip past that flange, so now it's just the O-rings holding it on. So I got a container under there just in case some fuel comes out. We'll see what happens. There it goes. Nope, no fuel. Let me get it all the way off there. There it is. Okay, so we'll cover that up. Alright, we're finally at the point now where we can start dropping the tank. We got all the connections undone. Those are the bolts for the straps. You can see the strap here and here, and those are the bolts for it. Another strap down there, and those are the bolts. And then on this side, they're easier to get to, like for example that one there. Those look like those are all 14mm. I'm going to try to do this without removing the exhaust. You can see the exhaust is running right there. I think I've got enough clearance. I have no clue where the center of mass is on this tank, but just looking at the shape of it, I think I'm about in a good spot. I double checked that I have about the same amount of overhang on each side from my platform. And then this shape up here, it's smaller up here than it is in the center, but it also does a similar thing down towards that end. So we'll see how close I am. I'll make some adjustments. I'll be able to get an idea by just loosening the bolts here, but not removing them all the way, so that the tank can kind of self-level on the hangers. That'll give me an idea of if I need to remove the jack. I do have the jack pressed up against the tank right now, so there shouldn't be much movement when I remove those. Alright, so I just went around with a ratchet on each of these until each one was loose. As you can see, this one's loose. I can still bring it out a little bit by hand, so it's loose. Same with this one down here. So the straps are free. I checked all of the fasteners on both sides, so that means the weight is on the jack. So I can go ahead and remove these fasteners and then lower it with the jack. I went around on both sides. You can see I've got the fasteners out and they are not loaded, so that one there and the one down there. Did the same thing on the other side. So now I can just turn these out by hand, and we'll just watch for any crazy load shifts on the jack. I don't think this tank weighs very much, and like I said, it's almost empty. Those are those 6 fasteners for those 3 straps. So it's completely supported by the jack now. It's not touching those safety straps. I'm just going to lower it a little bit and then have a look at the clearance on the exhaust, because like I said, I'd like to do this without taking the exhaust off. Yeah, you can see it moving a little there now. I think I'll stop there and have a look at the exhaust. Alright, I don't think I'm going to have a problem. The fuel tank is very light. As you can see, I can easily move it with one hand. So if you had even just a couple friends or one friend to help you do this job, if the fuel tank was empty, that's the big part though, is to get that fuel tank empty. You can see there, I think I'm going to have enough clearance there. So I don't think I'm going to have a problem. Over here, it looks like these are going to have to pop out. So far so good. I gave a little more slack to my safety straps. I'm going to go ahead and lower it a little bit more, so I can't quite get to the electrical connector yet. I have a ways to go, I think, before that's going to be possible. So here we are lowering. I'm going to stop there and see about my clearance on the exhaust. Alright, looks like I'm going to clear the exhaust just fine. And the one down there, I'll be able to kind of turn the fuel tank. So this looks good so far. There's a good look at the space there. Fuel pump's out in that white thing in the back. That's the collar. This vapor hose closest to us is already disconnected. That's the one we disconnected down at that end. So we'll just have to pop that off those guides. That one there. There's just that one. And then the one down there. You can see where it's out. Alright, so that's this hose here that we already disconnected the other side of. You can see it moving down there. So then we'll just leave it in place instead of disconnecting it. There's the fuel pump module there and the electrical connection. I can't reach it yet, so I'm going to lower the tank a little bit more. I also want to undo these little clips here for the electrical where it's just in those little clamps. Everything's clear. I'm clear of the exhaust on the far side. That hose is disconnected. Yeah, and that hose that hurt my fingers so much, I didn't even have to disconnect it. I could have just left that connected, so just leave that connected unless you have to replace it. You just leave it in place and just pop it out of the guides as you lower the tank. Unless maybe there's not enough slack. I don't know. You can, if you're having trouble with it, see if there's enough slack to lower it and reach your hand in there to pop it out of the guides. There is the fuel tank. You see I've got it on top of a box. Now I was able to move it all the way out till about here to disconnect that electrical. You can see how long it is. You're going to press this part in here, and then that's going to pull up. It's really hard, so I'll use the pliers. But be careful if you use the pliers because you can break it. So see how that goes, and then just wiggle it up carefully like that. So that's how you remove it. There's just a few spots on the cord where it's just pressed into some areas right here. It's just pressed in. So you just pop it out, and then see it goes over here. So there's just this one spot here, a couple spots here, and then one down there where these little tabs are. You just pull the wire, it comes out, and it's got plenty of slack. Now as far as clearances, if you have a jack like this Pittsburgh 3-ton and you put a platform on it like I did, you can see that's right at 6 inches there. And I just was able to get it out with the setup I have, which is ramps in the front, and you see I got it on wood in the back. I'll take some measurements there. The rear wheels I have at about 4 inches and 3/8, and then the front are on these Pittsburgh ramps. The Pittsburgh ramps are about 6 1/4 where the wheel sits. This thing here was the hardest to clear, so if we measure from the box to the top of that, looks like we are looking at call it 10 inches. You can see how it's I have a little less room there, a little more room here, so I just lowered the jack as low as it would go. It wouldn't make it out in the position that it was, so I had to just work the jack this way until I was up into an area where I could get this this thing to clear. There you can see about mid-span of the sliding door. That's the sliding door there. I have about 15 inches of clearance. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, vacuum it, and then hit it with some compressed air. Get it real nice and clean before I try to open that up. If you're getting into either one of these there too, do the same thing on those. I got it real cleaned up here, and an easy way to do that is to first vacuum it and then just spray it with compressed air to just loosen some of the dirt, and then just spray bottle with water. And then while it's wet with the water, spray it again with the compressed air, and the compressed air will get it real cleaned up. To get this fuel line connected, you can see on the side here, there's like a little leg, and see how it pulls back. Same on the other deal. So just go in with a couple of picks. Okay, once it's passed, oops, you can pull it out this way. Not quite. You don't want to break this because you will need to find some kind of replacement, because this is what holds the fuel line in. Sorry, my hand's blocking it, but just going to be how it is. There it goes. Okay. Get it past there. Almost. There. Okay. Now we can pull this back. Right here. There it is. Okay. So that little part right there, you just have to press it so it goes back. And then that's that. So put this to the side. And this just pulls up. So you're just going to pull it up. I'll try to move my hand so you can see. Just going to pull it up like that. See that? Just by hand. And I just moved that fuel line to the side, put it back over it. So now we'll address this collar. You can see on the tank there are some markings. And on this side, right here, there's an arrow. And then if we go this way, if we go clockwise, it's 455, 475, 515, and 535. And then it says service there, so the service range is between 535 and 475, meaning that when we torque this down, we want to be somewhere in that range. You can see there's an arrow on the collar. It has some little bit of paint on it. And they also made a paint mark here. Whoever installed this, this is the original, as far as we know anyway, this is the original pump and or pump module, all that. And you can see there's a Toyota. There's the Toyota logo there. This ring is very tight. The torque spec on this is 59 foot-pounds, so you're not just going to grab it and turn it by hand. There's a few ways to do this. Sometimes people will put like a screwdriver here or a pry bar here, a big one, and smack on the back of it, and that will work it around. You do have to be careful doing that you don't break these. Although, you know, if you break one, you can always move to another one. That's not ideal, but it does work, and it certainly works. I've done it myself, and you do what you got to do. But if you can, there's a tool I'll show you that makes this a little bit easier. This is a rental from AutoZone fuel pump replacement kit, OEM tools 27160. And if we look inside, it's got a lot of great tools. Whenever you get a rental, make sure that it has the parts in it that correspond to the list, because when I was renting this, somebody brought it back and it didn't have that piece, and they had to get it from another kit. This is the only piece I need from this here. Alright, this is how the tool goes. It's got those little features there, which, as you can see, fit on really well. And you can adjust it for like that other one over there that has the same style collar. So you want to get it on there and then get these. This one needs to be loosened a little bit. See, this one looks like it's just a tiny bit too small, but let's see if it'll work anyway. I think it'll work. So we're going to have it maxed out. These are 12 millimeter on this particular one here. Just going to tighten these. You can see it's got a square drive in there. I don't want these too tight though, just tight enough to hold the tool but not tight enough to clamp that. That's a 3/8 square drive, so I'm going to come on here with my breaker bar and turn counterclockwise. Have to move the camera. Okay, so you want to hold this and don't get carried away. Let's see if we can break it free. Alright, it's moving, that's good news. There it goes, okay. Alright, now I'm just going to move the breaker bar here. I don't know if that's going to be a good angle, but maybe. Okay, now it's coming. So this tool is pretty nice, and we can count the rotations as we go off, so we obviously haven't made a full rotation yet, because we have our little black mark. Okay. Alright. As you're going around, you want to mind these little things. There's one here and there and whatnot, and you just want to just press it in so it can clear that as you're turning it, right? See how it's doing that? And then up here there's another one. Just press it in, okay? And then it's doing it again. And then it's almost to the point probably where I can do it by hand. And you can see we're not even one rotation yet. And it's caught again down here. So just watch those as you're going around so you don't break those little clips on the collar. I think I can take this out and probably take this off. See what I can do by hand. Yeah, so just have to catch it as you're going around. And you can, at this point now, there's enough that I can push this down. So see how there's a spring effect? You'll see why in a second. So now once I have it pushed down, I can turn it very freely. So now we're coming around on, that is our, what? That's our first rotation. Okay. Oh, and it's off. All right. So now you'll see, I'm holding it down because it will spring up towards us. There's a little alignment tab here. You'll see when we do our install later. So I'm just going to make sure this top is nice and clean, so I don't have anything falling in there. Just wipe that, like that, and like so. And now I'm just going to let it release, like the spring action. And then once it's where it is, there we go. Now you want to have a container to put this in. And when we pull this out, there's going to be a fuel sender unit on this side. And when we pull it up, we have to make sure that we turn it a little bit. Okay, so see, it's going to catch right there. That's the fuel sender unit. So what we can do is kind of angle it. So see how I'm angling it? You see that right there? See this here? That's going to catch, so just angle a little bit. Now here's the old fuel pump, the whole fuel pump assembly. There's two electrical in here. There's one for the pump and one for the sender. And then the other components in here, there's a fuel filter, which is that part right here. Then there's a fuel pressure regulator, and then there's the pump. So I'm going to go ahead and just empty the fuel out by turning it. Let's see how much fuel comes out. Fair amount, so you want to be ready for that. Skip to the timestamp you see up here if you want to see how to break down the whole fuel pump module to get to the fuel pump, the fuel pressure regulator, the sender unit, the electrical, the fuel filter, all those parts. Because I'll show that at the end of the video on that same module that you just saw. Right now though, we're actually just going to be dropping in a whole new module. There's what we paid for the Toyota OEM from Olathe Toyota in Kansas, $382, and the gasket was $872. Delphi and Napa were both more expensive than the Toyota OE, which is unusual. The Delphi is usually cheaper, but that's the price that we paid for this whole module. So next you'll just see the module go in. Again, skip to that timestamp if you're just replacing a particular component, particularly if you're just replacing the fuel pressure regulator, because you can get that for about 75 to 100 bucks for that part from Toyota, and it's not difficult to change out. You can see that in that part of the video. The new fuel pump is in here. It's the whole fuel pump module, so it's ready to drop right in. This is the gasket as well. We'll replace that in just a second. I got this pump from a dealer in the greater Kansas City metro, and you'll see it looks identical. When I was researching these pumps, just like it's always been lately, there has been a lot of counterfeit pumps, and they're selling them as Toyota OEM, but they are not. So who knows what you're getting in there? And it's a super really great price, $150 or something for this whole module, which is very, very cheap. I know that's not cheap, but it's much less than the actual Toyota dealership price. But if you look, like on the one that we removed, and this one here that we're putting in, if you look carefully on the top, there is a little tiny Toyota. That's Toyota. It's got the part number on there, and it says Denso, so it's a Denso pump. It's a Denso fuel pressure regulator. I think they're the ones that make it. and so it's very difficult to see. You can see from back here, you can't even see it. So be very careful. You don't want to buy a counterfeit one. This whole module here is ready to go in. I just pull it right out of that plastic, and I'm just eyeballing it to make sure there isn't any packing material or anything that fell in there. It looks good. We'll pull this old gasket out here, and this isn't absolutely necessary because if your gasket's still in pretty good shape, but it does eliminate obviously any conjecture about seals. So that's the new one, just pops right in there like that. I'll bring the fuel assembly in here, and we want that sender thing to be, you know, how we had it. We had to turn it, so we'll kind of go in like this, and now it's in, and now we have to turn it this way because there's a tab up on the top. It's supposed to align. I'm just going to set it there for the moment and grab the collar. Alright, so you're going to make sure you press this down and that this tab is going into that alignment spot. And now holding this down, bring the collar on, and this arrow there, that arrow is going to line up with the start arrow. So we'll get that lined up, and then we're going to go one full revolution. So there's 180 degrees, and there's that click because it just caught on that, and another click, it just caught on that one, but they won't break when you're turning them in this direction. Now from here we're going to end up in the range, the service range between 475 and 535. We have that mark from where this was before, so that's going to be the goal. So I'll go as much as I can by hand and then bring the tool in. And that is all I can do by hand. I moved the camera to get a little room. You see I have the tool on there, and I'm just going to use the breaker bar. And there's a note in the FSM about doing this in a continuous motion and not backtracking, and also not using any type of ratcheting mechanism. So I'm just going to turn it. It's getting tight, and that's just that click from going around one of those. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead. Well, I'm going to see if I can make it to 475 before I put that torque wrench on. So I'm going to just move the tool. Here we go. Okay, I'm just a bit past 475. Now I'm going to grab a torque wrench. The torque is 59 foot-pounds. I'm anticipating will be somewhere around here where that other mark was, but we'll see what we got. Okay, we're at that old mark. I think I might stop there because that's where it was before. We're at not quite a turn and a half. Let me see if I can go a little bit more. It feels like that's almost maxing out. Yeah, I'm gonna call that good. Alright, we'll connect the fuel line now. I'll just take this valve off and make sure that that is clean, and we'll take this little cover off. And this goes on just like when we took it off. It pushes down in place, and then you have the yellow clip here. Alright, for this little clip here, it's going to be coming in this side where there's this little feature here, so it's going to be going that way, and you got to get it through those little spots, and then don't break it. There, it's just past there. Let's see if you can see that. Okay, you can. And then I notice that the taller part is facing up, so that part faces up. And then snap it in place, snap. Pull up on the fuel line, it's not moving. Check that it's behind there, and that's good. Alright, the fuel tank is on a box right now that just happens to be about the right height to get it under here more easily than it was to remove. And now I have a buddy, so this is going to go a lot better. You can see the door frame there, so we're scooted over by the electrical, and there's enough slack to connect this, and this just goes in until it snaps. It only fits one way, so push it in until it snaps. Snap. We slipped it in on that box and then moved it onto the jack there. You see I got the little safety straps back in place. So the electrical is plugged in. It's not all the way in the grooves yet, but we're just about lined up, so we're just going to move it up. I want to add an important note here. As you're raising the tank, be sure that none of the hoses or lines will be pinched or crushed. The reason is because if the hoses aren't in their right place as you're moving it up and you don't have it in its right place, there's a few spots where you might accidentally crush something because there's no clearance between the bottom of the chassis and the top of the tank. Also, you want to watch the tank straps over by the exhaust pipe, and if you have a friend to help, one person can watch underneath the tank while the other person operates the jack to carefully lift the tank. Before you go up too far, get the electrical back in on the little slots that we took it out for the pump, and then right there, and where's the other one? There. Get this vapor line back in. Couldn't really film it, but we just used the jack to move the fuel pump up until we could get these 14mm fasteners in to the through the straps and into the body, and then it was light enough that you could even lift it by hand. So we just got each one of the fasteners, all 6 of them, the 3 on each side, got them all in, and then used those to pull the tank up, and then we didn't need the jack at that point. Torque on these is 24 foot-pounds. You're going to want to go around and get them all kind of even as you pull it up. When you're doing that, make sure that any of your hoses towards the front or the back are not going to get pinched, because there's several places on the top of the tank that have no clearance between the chassis and the top of the tank, and if anything gets in there, it'll get crushed. So we're back over here. We'll get this connected in, and this is a quick connector. So we just need to get this pulled back like that, and then just as when we pulled it off, we're going to push this part past this flange, and then it'll snap, and then just push it in, make sure it's pull it back, push it in, make sure it's on there, and that's it. That's all there is to that. So for the vapor connector, this was that pain in the butt one that you had to squeeze like that. This has just got to get past there, so we should be able to just slide it on until it snaps. I forgot to mention putting the fuel tank up. Make sure you watch these connectors over here, because there is no clearance here. So if somehow this ends up here as you're pushing the fuel tank up, you'll crush it. So just be careful not to do that. Get this on here and snap it into place. Snap, okay, and just check that that's on there. That is good. Lastly, we've got the fuel filler hose, and this has that little bit of flex that we can get it back on here. So, get it on there. Flex over there. And just make sure that that is not catching anywhere. Is it catching? It feels like it's catching. It's catching on the top, so let me redo it. There it goes. Okay, now it was catching on the top. Oh, it was kind of folding in on itself. So we can push this all the way on now. And remember, I made that score mark on the, you can see here there's an arrow and there's like a bump here, so make sure those are in alignment. And remember, this clip here went into that. I made that score mark, so we'll just go ahead and tighten this. Make sure it's on there all the way. So you're not going to be able to see it on the camera, but make sure that this is pushed all the way in. You want that to go as close to that little nubby as possible, like that. And then with your 10mm or your screwdriver, turn this, and you can see that's going to move in there. You want to make sure that it's not going to skip out of that. And I'm just going to give it a little guidance there. So I'm going to be coming around to my scribe mark soon. just so I know I've got it about the same tightness. And there's my scribe mark right there to there, so just a tiny bit more. That's it. So that's on there. All right, back up here, make sure that you push the hose back into the connector, whichever one that you took out or both, and then that's just that electrical that we popped out, the little connector for the harness, and then here as well, just push all those in. Now we'll do this vapor line here. This is the one that had that red connector. So when you put this clip back in, hopefully your clip didn't come out all the way, or you didn't pull it out all the way like mine did and it stopped like this, because you want to make sure that that red one on the inside is on the inside. So don't put it on the outside because it'll spread open and turn and you won't be able to get it back on. So when you put that clip on, you want to make sure that that red one right there is on the inside and then the hook there is on the outside. Then when you have it, push it on, get it snapped on there really well, and then slide it up, and there's going to be an alignment on the bottom, and that's it. Then just give it a good tug, make sure it's on there, make sure the clips are up in place, and we'll move on to this fuel line. We'll get this fuel line connected now, just like the other one. It's blue because it's a slightly different size, but that's just going to snap into place. Snap. Give it a, oops, I didn't get it snapped on. Snap, and then give it a tug. Make sure that it's on there. And we're going to leave this cover off so we can check for leaks before we put the cover on. If you had your sliding doors open and you opened them after you disconnected the battery, then you need to close the doors before you reconnect the battery, otherwise it won't close the doors. So in that case, just close the doors manually with the battery disconnected, and then when you reconnect the battery, it should still be synced. I reconnected the battery and we'll check for leaks before we put the covers back on. All right, back inside. See if she'll start and then we'll check for leaks. Alright, now there she goes. We'll just let her run for a little bit and check for leaks. Fuel is still very low. Looking back here, this looks good. Looks good there. Connector up there looks good. So if you're good on leaks, you can go ahead and put the cover back on. This is that one that just has those 3 fasteners, just like that. They're all the same. And then if you did like me and you undid this fastener to get access to that one, just put that back in place as well. If you ended up removing this, just put those fasteners back in. No leaks up here, so push this back on. When you're pushing it on, don't let this catch on that blue panel. Just keep pushing it on until it goes over, otherwise it'll get stuck. And then the 6 fasteners, those 10 millimeters for this cover for the charcoal canister. And that'll do it. Let's take this apart and see the components inside. We have 2 electrical connections here. This one on the outside here is the thinner wires. That's for the sending unit. And you're just going to press in here, press in there, and pull it down. Okay, there it is there. Okay. Then this one here is for the pump, and this is on the side. You press that one in on the side and wiggle it out. You can see the tab that it has to clear there to come out. It's almost out. Okay, that's the electrical. Now to take this thing apart, I'm going to start on this side down here, this here, and if I can zoom in on there. You can see there's a little clip here. There's a few of these that you'll see throughout this assembly on this. These can be brittle, but usually they're pretty good. So if you use a screwdriver or something like this, like I just did, you can typically get under it. And then there's one on the other side. So you see all I did was kind of lift it up and pry it over those little, you don't want to lift it up, you know, get crazy or anything, but you just want to nicely lift it up over the little latches. And like I said, there'll be a few places where we'll see clips like this. Let me move that center out of the way. Once this is pulled back like that, it just kind of sits free. And then this hose, let me turn it here, it's in those grooves, so we're just going to kind of pop it out. We should be able to get it past that center without having to take the center off. Might have to pull it up here a little bit. Let me get it out of here. Okay, so it just popped out of there. Oops, pop it out here. And then up on the top here, you'll be able to just kind of pull the electrical out of the little loop right here. Okay, so that electrical is out. And now, oops, let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. See, it's disconnected there. It's out of that track. And we can pull up on it just so it's off this little latch there. Okay, like that. That's free. Now we turn it and go to this side. We have a couple more of those little clasps. Same deal. We're just going to pop under them and move up like that. We're just going to get this loose for now. We can kind of move it like that. Now, to get the whole thing out, there is on this one here, one of yours there, will have a little E-clip. So just push down on the top. Make sure you're not smushing anything. Just push down on the top. I'll zoom in. You can usually reuse these E-clips if you're careful, and if you don't lose them, because sometimes they go flying. I'm just going to grab them with these pliers. Pull this clip straight out. Pull it straight out, and hopefully don't drop it or have it go flying across the garage. There it is. Okay, there's that. Now keep your hand on the, let me zoom out. I keep pressing down on this because them springs are going to want to push this up. Now with all that stuff connected, this should pull off pretty freely. Okay, so I'll just pull the top up. There you go. Get this electrical out of the way. This part, this hose here, do not disconnect that. I'll show you why in a second. There we go. And the spring fell off. These are both the same springs, so you can just pull those off. This is the part you don't want to disconnect. Right. Oh boy, look at that sunlight there. Okay. Don't disconnect this. The reason is because it can be very difficult to reseal that, and then you're going to end up with the fuel leak there, which will cause low fuel pressure. You don't have to undo this, so just leave it just like that. And with all of that out, if I can get everything in the camera, we can pull this whole thing up. So there we go. We got that whole kit and caboodle out. And now in here, you can see it's got some dirt in there. So we'll clean that out. And then this is just that bottom bowl. We'll just put that to the side. This is what we have now. This here is the fuel filter. The fuel pump is inside this cylinder. This is the strainer for the fuel pump. And this here is the part that failed on this vehicle. It's this is the fuel pressure regulator. You don't want to undo this hose here or that hose there because I mean, either end of that hose, I should say, because you might have a hard time resealing it. Same with these deals here. Just leave them. You can work around them. To get into the fuel pump or to get this pressure regulator out, we have to take off this bottom part. There are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one on the bottom side, 5 of these little clasps. Same style as the other ones. You just got to be careful on this one since there's 5 that you don't break any. So I just like to put a little pick in there. You can use a old credit card, cut it in half or in quarters or thirds, and you can kind of use those as little shims. Once you peel it back, because this whole bottom part is going to come off in one unit once you get those little 5 clasps up. So just pry it up on these 2 here, and then see if I can pry up on that one. Okay, it's actually going pretty well. It doesn't feel like it's going to break or anything. This is the last one here. Okay. Okay, I think I just need to give a little encouragement here. And maybe right there. should have put that in there in the beginning, and that would pumped it out faster. There's that. This here is the fuel pressure regulator, and that there's the pump. To get the pressure regulator out, you just pull it out or pry it out. I'm gonna probably have to just give a little pry here. And you can see it's moving. That white part is part of it. You'll see there's like a nylon washer, a couple O-rings in there. Let's see if I can get it out once I get it. I might have to go a little bit more. Okay, there it goes. Oh, okay, and some fuel. Fuel's leaking out there. There is the fuel pressure regulator. Okay, this says, I'll give you the total part number, and this one also says on there, Denso 4, does that say 4990? And then these O-rings, you would want to replace both of these O-rings here. This one here and that one there. You don't want to ever use these O-rings on the fuel pressure regulator unless you absolutely must. To get the ring off, just kind of squeeze it enough so you can get a hook in there. And then just get under it and shake it off. That's that top one. Then if you need to test this, or if you want to try to clean it, I don't think they get dirty, but if you do want to break this apart, you can pull up on this little strainer deal, and you can see this collar. Looks like a brass collar. That'll come with it. Just bring it up and off like this, and then once you have this off, this will come off. And the direction on this is you want that side facing that way when you go to put this together. This O-ring just pulls off right here, and then this nylon washer comes off. We can kind of see how that fuel pressure regulator works if we look in here at that well where we took it out. You can see there's an opening there, and that's coming from the fuel filter side. So that's where fuel is coming in, and then there's an opening over here, and that lines up right here with this tube, which is the discharge tube. Then you can see there's an outlet here, and if we look right there, you can see that hole. And that is where fuel is going to come back out. So the main gist of it is, let me grab one of these regulators. This is seated up in there with the, that's up in there like that. With, when the rings are on there, it stays in. And that ring is sealing, there's the one ring that goes down here, and then the little ring up there. So this, that cavity that drains out to here, that's sealed off from the rest of the part. So there's fuel coming in through the fuel filter here, the pressurized fuel from the pump. It's going in these little openings on the regulator, and then it's coming out the other side into this discharge tube. And if pressure is too high, this diaphragm will move down, which will open up this vent to that flow through. So some of the fuel will drain out through here, will be pressed out through here, I should say, pressurized throughout here, and then it'll drain back into the tank. This is a fuel pressure regulator that's very similar to the one you just saw in the Sienna. This one is from a Camry, and you can see the last 5 are different on the part number. But other than that, it's very similar. It might have a different spec as far as when it opens, and it did have an O-ring on it. I just took it off. As far as testing these, when they fail, they're either going to fail to the low side where they're allowing too much fuel to vent through here, or they're going to fail to the high side where they're not allowing any or not enough fuel to vent through here. The Sienna was the latter of those cases. Whatever's going on inside the Sienna fuel regulator, there is either an obstruction in the path from fuel to go down, or the diaphragm is not moving down in such a way that fuel is not making it out this vent. So fuel pressure on the line is very, very high. We picked that up by putting a fuel pressure gauge on the line. Check the pinned comment. I'll put a link to that video, so if you need to learn how to tap into a Toyota fuel system, you can see. The other way it might fail is the opposite, which is too much fuel going through here. And that's typically the way they fail, according to what I've heard and seen. They fail that way, where you're getting real hard starts, no starts. It starts out hard starts, and it's no starts. Then it's no fuel pressure, but the pump is getting power, and you can actually pump with the pump, but still no fuel pressure on the rail. And in that case, then when they fail so bad, you can put a hose on this end here and blow in the other end, and it'll actually blow up through that baffle. This one's not going to do it because this one hasn't failed like that. Okay, but if you do that on yours and you're getting those symptoms, low fuel pressure, then that's a easy test. If you fail that, then replace that fuel pressure regulator. You shouldn't be able to blow through here. But just because you can't blow through it, it doesn't mean that it's not having a leak down problem. You'd have to try to diagnose it a little bit further. As far as testing the regulator for the case where it's failing and allowing too much pressure, I've tried a couple different ways and I haven't figured out an effective way to do that. I've tried putting a hose over the outside of this so that I could pressurize that area in there, and then putting a hose inside of that other outside hose and splitting it up to a Y, putting a gauge on one and compressed air in the other with a gauge on that, and trying to compare to see if there's a pressure drop. And I just end up getting a lot of air leaks because it's difficult to have one hose running within another and then to have that come out and sealing it. And so I just kind of gave up on it. If I do devise a method, I will post a video, but if you have a method, please post your comment or a link to a video and I will include it in the pinned comment, because that'd be great to have a way to test these for the high pressure failure. Now, if you're just replacing your fuel pressure regulator, just grab your new one and push it in there. It'll seal just with those O-rings, then put the bottom piece back on. You'll see that later in the video. I'm going to go ahead and keep breaking this down. I'm going to do this over a container because once you start messing with this pump, a lot of fuel will leak out. The pump is held in place right now just by an O-ring, and sometimes you can just kind of give it a little tug on the bottom, it'll pop out. This one's being a little bit more stubborn. So I'm just going to remove this electrical just so I can push on the top of it. If you clamp down on that top part and just gently go on the bottom part, you can do this with one stroke on this. Just see how I got both the top and bottom. Just gonna wiggle it, don't want to break it, just be nice. And it's starting to come up, it's almost there. There it is. Now you can see the top of the pump, and I'm just gonna press down with my thumb to get it to come out this side, because it's gonna be fighting me. That O-ring is what's gonna be fighting me. I might have to get in there with the, yeah. Let me get in there and push that with a pry. I'm going with something a little longer there. Come on. There it is. Had to push pretty hard. There's a real good seal on that O-ring. And there's the pump. There you can see there the O-ring came out with the pump. But I'll put an arrow on it. That's the part where the fuel, the pressurized fuel, is going into this fuel filter, and then again it's coming out that little hole to go to the regulator. I'll move this to the side now. We can just look at this pump. Alright. So this is that O-ring. It's more like it's kind of a special design there that fits on there. I'll search this pump out for a part number, but I want to show you this logo here, right there. That logo is very hard to read. Sometimes people think it says USROM or ASROM or RSOM. It says ASIN. It's an old stylized ASIN logo that they still use on their injectors and fuel pumps, a few other fuel system components. That's AI. Then the line is like the dot of the I, S-A-N. Looks like an M on the back, but it's not. So if you see this on your fuel pump or on your injectors for that matter, you got the OG. This is Toyota OE. This is good stuff. So if you can get an ASIN fuel pump or a Denso, they might even be like Denso boxed ASIN stamped. Those are good fuel pumps. The number I see on here is 812FJB. I'll check if that's a part number or some other type of number. There it says 2FJ, positive and negative, so you can test it without having a wiring diagram. On the bottom here, there's an E cast in. I don't see any other part numbers on the casing housing here. So if you're just replacing your fuel pump, or you just want to get in there and make sure that you don't have anything stuck in there, make sure your new fuel pump has a, whatever you want to call this, O-ring, whatever, and you're going to be lining it up like that. I'm just going to dip my finger in some clean fuel to lubricate this and push it in there. Make it a little bit easier to install it. So line it up about where it needs to be, and then push it into place. Okay, that's in. And get our electrical, and it's the black side that goes in. You can't fit the gray side in. Just get it in there until it snaps. Snap, give it a good tug. Make sure that's in there, that's in there. If you took your fuel pressure regulator apart, it goes back together like this with the nylon washer. Goes on there, and then the big O-ring. Then this baffle deal, it goes with that side. So kind of the deeper side facing down, like that. Then where'd that little brass collar go? This little brass collar. Put on there and then kind of move it down with the pick. Push that down. Like that. And then the O-ring on the tip here. Just like that. So there is the fuel pressure regulator, and that's going to go right back in here. Just fits in. It's a good idea to rub a little bit of gasoline on here. I'll do that real quick. I'll clean gas on the O-ring. This is actually a bad regulator, but I'm just putting it in to show you how to put this all back together. Push it in like that. Okay, so the pump's in, the regulator's in. Now we can put the strainer back on. And I just blew this side with some compressed air. It just had some bits of, like, you can see little bits of metal in there, probably from the filler pipe. When you put the gas pump in, little bits of metal can fall in there. This is just going to line up with this side to the regulator and that there to the pump. So it should go on. Be pretty self-explanatory. Get it over those clips. On. Snap. So there's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oops, sorry, 5. So those are all in. Now we can grab the bowl. If you position the bowl like this with the sender facing, the float facing this way and the sender electrical facing that way, this is the side where the E-clip is going to go back in. There's only one of these. See, this one doesn't have any features on it for the E-clip, but this one has a little groove there. So that's how that's going to position back in. We can just kind of put this back in the bowl with that, keeping that in mind. And then this part as well, if you remember, this part, that hose is going to go down there. So that's just kind of a way to kind of eyeball it when you're putting it in. And then on this side, it's going to line up with those little clamps. We don't need to get it all the way in just yet. We can just kind of set it and then slip the springs on. The springs are the same. It doesn't matter which one they go on. I'll put this one over here and that one there. Now I'll just kind of line it up into those holes and just check all the rest of the alignment before I do that. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this little guy back in kind of in its general spot here. If you remember, that is going in there, and then up here that goes there. So we might have to just move this a little bit. Make sure we've got that lined up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and snap this in place right there. And then this, I'll lift it up here so it can slide into that little spot. Is it sliding in? Okay, there it goes. That's sliding in. This electrical just kind of went right around there like that. And then down here, this is going to snap in place here, but we got to kind of get the hose back in first. Get that hose back in. And then I'm not going to snap that just yet. Make sure I got everything else lined up here. That's good. So I'll go ahead and push the lid down. You do have to kind of Move them a little bit because they have to fit right in exactly the right way. So it's there. And there's the one where we put the clip. So to reinstall this clip, let me see if I can get that to focus. I'm pushing down on the lid, and then I'll just grab the E-clip with the pliers and push it right back into place. There it is. Make sure that's on there well. It is, and that's good. Alright, that looks good. And then back on this side here, we have the electrical for the sender and the fuel pump. Fuel pump was the one that you do the fuel pump on first just because it's easier to reach it. As it goes in, that clasp goes right there. So line that up, snap it in, snap, and give it a little tug. Make sure it's on there. It is. That's the sender. That only fits one way as well. Push that in until it snaps, snap, and give that a little tug. So electrical is in. Last one, we'll just come down here and pop this into place. Make sure that snaps in on both sides. That side there and that side there. Just give it a little tug. So that's good. So now I'll just put up a timestamp, and if you had broken down the pump to replace a part, you just go back in the video to see the install on this module. And that is a wrap on the fuel pump replacement for this 2013 Toyota Sienna. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please leave any tips or questions or comments in the comment section. And thank you for watching, and good luck with your repair.